and questions in the chat box. Comments and questions will be addressed during the public comment period. For our record to reflect your attendance and comments, please sign in and complete a speaker card and present it to staff, which is, we're all Zoom, so
Right.
that doesn't apply. But we will read the comments at the appropriate time of the meeting. All right, so I guess our first item of business will be to approve the action summary. And we'll review the last meeting action summary and hopefully get a motion to approve the minutes. Everybody has had a copy of the minutes.
Actually, it was, yeah, I was sent out on the agenda packet yesterday.
Right. Okay. Have we all reviewed it, board members, and are there any comments or questions on the minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept them as presented.
Hey, this is Jessica. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Jessica. Do we have a second?
Tim Mott, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Tim. We have a motion by Jessica Carney and a second by Tim Mott. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion will carry. Thank you. All right. At this time, we'll hear about updates from Keelia.
Okay, thank you, Donald. So just wanted to recap since we met last time, which I believe was in July. So the final governance recommendation, our final recommendation was adopted by the Regional Steering Committee on July 15th and submitted to LWI. On August 5th, the Council on Watershed Management had all the regions present their governance recommendation. We did highlights and turned in our formal recommendation to them. It's my understanding that the regional governance recommendations will be in a legislative packet, and the regions will be able to review their respective recommendation before that is submitted to the legislature. And the goal is to, for our governance recommendations to be going to the legislature in 2022 to be enabled by the state for coalitions, to form watershed coalitions. Does anyone have any questions or comments? And all this is our governance recommendation, final recommendation is available online on our website. Again, just to summarize and recap, for the regional round one project announcements, we have a summary of the regional projects that were selected by the Regional Steering Committee, and this was approved by the council. So what we had did for Region 5, we had 3 projects, or 2.5. We had the St. Martin Parish, Cypress Bayou Coulee Saw project, Vermilion Parish, the bridge debris system, and we were actually sharing a project at Region 2, which is in the Voiles Parish in the town of Mansura, Bayou Lacombe. So that was voted on and accepted. And if anyone has any questions regarding that as well. Okay, I believe we have with us today, Mr. Brad Spiegel is online. He's with the Office of Community Development with the Louisiana Watershed Initiative, and he might have some announcements and updates for us. Brad?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, thank you, Keelia. So most, I think, as far as I'm concerned, that for round one, all of the grantees have been contacted and the award letters were sent out from Office of Community Development. And the OCD is currently scheduling a CDBG boot camp for the fall for these new grantees to take in order to understand how to manage the grant over the life of the grant during the implementation phase. So Keelia, would you mind going down on the agenda?
Sure.
So that's the main update with round one. And then I just kind of wanted to, I know you all are aware, Keelia has been sending out emails we're currently in the model use storage maintenance public comment period, which goes until October 25th. Kelia, I think you sent out an email yesterday that has a link to the web. The recording is posted on our website from the
Yes.
webinar that took place last Friday, the 24th, that kind of elaborates on what's in the plan and recommendations for long-term maintenance and use. So, and then we'll go to item B for round 2 project funding. We're kind of still in that holding period of the policies and procedures are just getting finalized by everyone that needs to review them. And so we should know more in the fall about next steps. And then I think the goal, in this, everything got a little delayed with the storm, but the goal was to make awards by the end of the year or early part of next year. And again, or as a reminder, round 2 is coming. This was an announcement that happened at the council on August 5th. Round 2 is actually pulling projects that were already submitted from round 1. And the scoring committee is going to analyze the projects based on HUD mid, based on LMI qualifications, based on technical assistance needed. They realized that when reviewing the initial round 1 applicant pool, a lot of projects were ineligible, and so the state's really assessing the capacity needs and then going to kind of analyze from a geographic dispersion standpoint what areas of the state should also or be a good qualifying entity for these awards. So yeah, that's all happening right now.
Very good. Thank you for that update, Brad. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments at this time. Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you. The next line item, speaking about project funding. So we're looking at additional project funding. And today we have guest speakers from FEMA. FEMA has the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC funding. And we have guest speakers, Miss Stacy Bowes and Miss Sandra Peterson with FEMA. They're going to present on specific details for BRIC funding. And the grant application, I believe, actually opens today. So it's very fitting that we have them here as speakers. And the grant will close on January 28th, 2022. So Sandra or Stacy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. Again, I'm Stacy Bowes. Sandra and I are going to be covering the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. It's kind of a mouthful, so we typically call it the BRIC program. If you could go to the next slide for me. So just wanted to give you some background on the BRIC program. We wanted to ensure a steady stream of funding year to year for pre-disaster hazard mitigation projects. So when the Disaster Recovery Reform Act came out, Section 1234 actually amended the Stafford Act under Section 203 to allow for that. So the way that it works is it's funded by 6% set aside, and that's actually an estimated amount from disaster assistance for each disaster to fund the BRIC program. And states and territories that have disaster declarations under the Stafford Act in the past 7 years, prior to the annual application period start date, they're actually eligible to apply for the BRIC program. Next slide, please. So this is our BRIC funding slide. You can kind of see the process. The way that it works is there's an estimate of federal post-disaster grant funding, and that's made for each major disaster declaration 180 days after the declaration date, at which time 6% is actually contributed to the BRIC account, or likely call it the BRIC piggy bank. And then the BRIC account continuously accrues funds as it goes along. So no additional estimates will be made for the purposes of the BRIC account. So that means if the number goes up or down, depending on the disaster process as it continues, it's not going to change that original 6%. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide that actually covers who's eligible for funding. So our applicants are the same that they've always been. That's the 50 states, federally recognized tribes, territories, and then the District of Columbia. And then our sub-applicants are local governments, Indian tribal governments, and then state and tribal agencies. Next slide, please. So these are our BRIC guiding principles. The Disaster Recovery Reform Act, or DURA as we call it, that actually provides us with the opportunity to support proactive investment in community resilience. And that's one of the biggest things that FEMA is looking at. So communities that plan to mitigate their risk can reduce the impact of disasters and have a quicker path to recovery and experience less disaster suffering. So going through our guiding principles, you'll kind of see that BRIC means we want communities to consider changes to infrastructure that reduces damages caused by disasters. So one of the things that we always say too is that not all projects have to be highly complex or even expensive. So it can be a myriad of different things. We look for innovation and creative ideas in that realm as well. So one of the unique aspects of BRIC is a commitment to promoting partnerships and networks, and that helps our applicants to build capacity and capability, and that's through collaboration and information sharing. And we want to encourage and support our stakeholders in partnering with new types of organizations and establishing those lines of communication where none have existed previously. So as our partners, you all act as our champions. So that spreads the message to a larger audience. You also act as service providers, and service providers that can provide technical expertise, such as engineering or training and mitigation, and then also connections to other funding that can be leveraged to support mitigation. The BRIC program positions the agency to fulfill its mission of helping people before, during, and after disasters, which is the backbone of our strategic plan here at FEMA. Next slide, please. Okay, so our cost share requirements. Generally, FEMA will pay up to 75% of the total project costs. And under BRIC, there's actually an opportunity for FEMA to pay up to 90% of the total project costs. And that is typically for small and impoverished or economically disadvantaged rural communities. Economically disadvantaged is definitely one of the buzzwords this year, as it was last year. And we're looking at a wide variety of different disadvantages. One of the other benefits of the BRIC program is FEMA actually pays 100% of the management costs, and that's subrecipient management costs, but also recipient management costs. And when looking at your application and actually submitting for those costs, we do ask that you detail that out in a separate. And then finally, the non-federal cost share. That can actually be made up of several different things: cash, labor in kind, or even third-party donations. Next slide, please. So this slide goes over our eligible activities. These same eligible activities that are in the HMA guidance from 2015 still apply. We've just expanded them under BRIC, so that way we can include more, a wider variety of projects. So project scoping, building code activities. BRIC now includes pre-award costs, where before the pre-disaster mitigation program or PDM program that BRIC actually is taking the place of did not include pre-award costs. Then you have additional activities for things like wildfire, wind implementation, and then earthquake warning sirens. Some of the criteria that the projects must meet, they have to be cost effective. And that's not necessarily something that has changed. Projects have always needed to be cost effective, but also to reduce and eliminate risk for damages from future natural hazards. One of the things we're going to go over a little bit later in the presentation, but the international building codes, they need to meet 3 of the latest building codes. So whether that's 2015, 2018, or the newly released 2021 building codes. Your project needs to align with your hazard mitigation plan, of course, unless your project is a hazard mitigation plan. And then it needs to meet all of the EHP requirements. And EHP is the environmental and historical preservation requirements. Next slide, please. So this is kind of where we're at right now. You'll notice that the NOFO was actually released this past summer. And as was stated earlier, today is the open application period. And that does run to January 28th of 2022. And that's 3 p.m. Eastern time. Now, that is the deadline for applicants. Sub-applicants are going to have a much earlier deadline, and that is going to be based off of what your state as the applicant sets. And so then after the application period closes, February through May of 2022, here at the region, FEMA will be doing the reviews. And then during that time, it will be reviews and then selections on based on criteria of, excuse me, I apologize, but a little bit of allergies going on today. Selections based off of eligibility and completeness. And then after that, during the spring, winter, spring timeframe of next year, then the projects will go through a national technical review. And this includes a qualitative review, but also a national competition review. So once that takes place, if you notice in the slide, it kind of goes through the process. The results are validated, and then the selection process starts to occur. So as long as the applicants pass all of the review queues, the summer of 2022, that's when the selections are actually announced. And you will see that the sub-applications will be selected for further review. And then once that happens, then we do a final review, which could potentially include an RFI process or a request for information process. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Sandra Peterson, and she's going to go over our FY20 submissions and selections, and then also our FY21 funding cycle, and then some valuable resources that we have that you can, I believe the PDF actually doesn't have clickable links, but Helia will provide you the PowerPoint that actually has the links where you can click on those. And that way you don't have to type those in by hand.
Thank you, Stacy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Peterson. Today, I'm going to show you what the FY20 BRIC priorities and selections were, as well as the FY21 best practices and resources. If we could go to the next slide, please. To start off with the BRIC FY20 priorities, priorities were to incentivize public infrastructure projects, projects that mitigate risk to one or more lifelines, projects that incorporate nature-based solutions, and increase funding to applicants that facilitate the adoption and enforcement of modern building codes. Next slide, please. FY20 BRIC competitive selections competition. All projects selected for further review incorporated nature-based solutions in their scope of work and had a very detailed narrative description. State-level building codes and community BSEG scores also had an impact on selections. The first year BRIC, there was 500 million available, and we received 980 applications totaling $3.6 billion in requests. This was the most ever received to date for pre-disaster mitigation projects. Sub-applications that had nature-based solutions, adopted statewide building codes, and communities with better BSEC scores had a greater chance of being selected. 17 out of the 22 applications also had increased local share. Next slide, please. FY20 brick selection project types. Projects selected totaled over $377 million. You will notice a bulk of the funding went to flood control projects, followed by utility and infrastructure protection. These projects oftentimes extend to disadvantaged or underserved populations of larger communities, where access to health and human services, transportation, and communications is a priority. These projects also focus on protecting large and small community infrastructure. I'd like to provide you 2 examples of projects that were selected in FY20 to show you what a strong scope of work was and some selections that were chosen. The first one I chose is in Hoboken, New Jersey. I chose this because I had recently relocated from New Jersey. The project is the Hudson River Floodwall Infrastructure and Resilience Park Project. It has a $22.52 million federal share. The project reduces storm surge flooding for highly populated, dense urban coastal communities. There are 2 low-lying elevation areas in parts of Jersey City, Weehawken, and the city of Hoboken that act as an inlet for floodwaters. During Hurricane Sandy, over 400 million gallons of coastal storm surge entered at 2 breach points. This project will construct a resist structure flood wall and secure these 2 points to reduce flood risk from severe weather events. The second project I will highlight that was selected, I chose this because my husband is currently in San Francisco for business. It's in San Francisco, California. It's called the Menlo Park Safer Bay Project. It has a federal share of $50 million. This project prevents flooding to substation and improvements to the environment and habitat. This project is a large-scale infrastructure project that proposes a continuous earthen levee with a living shoreline and flood walls to protect 3.7 miles of infrastructure and an electrical substation. Project reduces risk to almost 300,000 customers impacted by loss of function of the substation. Additionally, it creates 30 acres of tidal marsh transition zone and provides nearly 5 acres of western snowy plover breeding habitat, which is currently listed as an endangered species. So those are 2 examples of projects that were chosen in FY20 to give you examples of strong scope of works. Next slide, please. BRIC FY20 funding cycle, best practices, and resources. Next slide, please. BRIC funding limits. FY21 state and tribal allocations have increased from $600,000 to $1 million in the FY21 cycle. Up to $500,000 can be used for planning activities. Our national competition has up to $50 million in federal share per sub-application, and there are no limit on the number of applications you can submit in the competitive category. Next slide, please. FY21 BRIC selection best practices. As a reminder, projects must be cost effective, reduce or eliminate risk and damage from future natural hazards, meet the latest 2 consensus codes, align with the hazard mitigation plan, and I'll point out a hazard mitigation plan must be approved by the application deadline date of January 28th, 2022. And must also meet all environmental and historic preservation requirements. On this slide, you will see the points available for the technical and qualitative criteria with a total maximum of 230 points. FEMA acknowledges the importance of strong building codes and will provide a tiered point allotment for building codes in FY21. 10 points will be given for applicants that have mandatory tribal, territory, or statewide building code adoption requirements, 2015 version of the International Building Code and International Residential Code, with 20 points going if the mandatory versions are 2018 or 2021 versions of the International Building Code and International Residential Code. In FY21, we are incorporating equity by prioritizing assistance that benefits disadvantaged communities. As you will notice on the slide, 4 of the 6 BRIC qualitative evaluation criteria reflect the need for sub-applications to speak on how the project will benefit disadvantaged communities. Those 4 are risk reduction, resiliency, effectiveness. Second being population impacted. For example, in a drainage scope of work narrative, it is important to highlight how the benefit area of the project serves disadvantaged communities in the area. Third one is outreach activities. And 4th, leveraging partnerships. Furthermore, BRIC reduces the non-federal cost share from 25% to 10% for economically disadvantaged rural communities. Next slide, please. BRIC program support materials. Here's a reference list with links to our BRIC program support materials, including BCA, FEMA Go, and links to where you can find copies of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Our main website page is fema.gov/BRIC. Next slide, please. Lastly, here are some additional FEMA resource pages with links. As Stacy mentioned, we'll be sending out a copy of the slide deck where you can just click on the links to be brought to those website pages. I'd like to point out FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Division will be hosting open office hours for the BRIC program Tuesdays and Thursdays the last 2 weeks of October. Times have not yet been released, but they should be shortly, and we encourage you to join us on the calls. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation of the BRIC program, and we'd like to welcome any questions on our program that myself, Stacy, or Marty Chester, our Region 6 BRIC supervisor, can help answer for you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Sandra. I really appreciate the information. And I want to let the subcommittee know there were a lot of FEMA BRIC webinars that were provided. And so I have kind of detailed notes on the types of the technical qualitative criteria and the points that you get. So there's a lot of good information. A couple of things, I think you said earlier, typical projects that might prioritize nature-based solutions, statewide building codes, projects dealing with lifelines and, disadvantaged and impoverished communities. With the Louisiana Watershed Initiative and looking at projects, we want like a multi-jurisdictional project, a regional focus. So I was wondering if BRIC can apply to the Louisiana Watershed, Initiative. This is something maybe our subcommittee could maybe consider, like having a regional project, see how we can facilitate this. But I guess with the BRIC funding, is there only one applicant, or could we have multiple applicants for a project if we're doing like a project that is multi-jurisdictional?
So so you can do multiple application types if you're doing a multi-jurisdictional or say you've got different parishes within your specific region. FEMA actually encourages that. So it would be under one applicant. However, if it's different project types, then you can have multiple applications. Does that answer your question? Sorry, my connection is a little shoddy, so I apologize.
Yeah, I think so. So we can have multiple application types, but we have there'd be one person or one entity that would be like the one applicant. But then I guess if we're looking at, we could have various entities applying for multiple projects. Would that show
Yeah, you-
like, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah,
no
you would
problem.
have one main, whether it's a parish or, a county, however, that breaks down, you'd have that one main POC, but you would have multiple partnerships with your different parishes or communities. And I would definitely notate that in your scope of work narrative, so that it does show that partnership, because BRIC is very, very heavy into the partnerships and multiple stakeholders. It's one of the main focuses.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Stacy or Sandra?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Jessica.
A little bit of it is a question, and then the follow-up, I just wanted to kind of talk to the committee members. But one of the general things is BSEGS is a rather high bar for smaller communities, particularly rural communities, to cross. So does BRIC funding actually help? Would it be possible to apply for a person to work in a community on BSEGS and to maybe pay to get all of the building inspectors certified and those kinds of things to make BSEGS feasible in a community that's not quite as robust as Menlo Park, California?
Marty, I'm going to turn that question over to you, if that's all right.
Yes, absolutely. Hey guys, this is Marty. I work closely with Sandra and Stacy. Short answer, no. Long answer, we got other options to work with. So the one of the things we want to do with BRIC is building resilience, right? So how do we build that capacity and capability at the local level? One of the things, it's not an LWI activity is to go in and either pay some salaries or hire contractors or, do that to develop, to talk about what you were talking about. What is an option is how do we do something that's called advanced assistance, right? Where we go in and we help the local jurisdiction build that capacity with an end goal in mind, right? So we want to do this. We want to enhance our BSAC scores. That's one thing we want to do. But within that, we also want to identify maybe the structures that are at high risk. We want to also leverage partnerships. We want to identify mitigation opportunities. So there's 4 things right there that we can do in combination with that one thing you were talking about. So when we look at what we want to do, we look at the scope of what we want to do. We want to do 1, 2, 3, 4 things. With those 4 things, maybe we don't know what that outcome is going to look like. One of the things that BRIC does offer is called project scoping or advanced assistance, where we can pay money. We call it seed money to grow that project, to grow the capacity capability at the local level. With that, we have to have an end in mind. We want to do these things to accomplish this, right? So that is an option. One of the things that I would encourage us to look at as it's a Louisiana Watershed Initiative. You guys got a really great website, by the way. I've been perusing that for a couple of weeks now. I had a couple of ooh moments. I'm like, oh yeah, this is really cool, right? So one, I'd encourage you to keep up the website. I've shared that with many other states as well, by the way. So thank you for having a great website. But one of the things I'd like to encourage you guys to do is work with with our state partners, GOSEP. GOSEP is our recipient. They will work with the Watershed Initiative group to help develop and streamline those. So the reason I'm mentioning that is you're not alone on this, right? Work in partnership with your state agency to help streamline those approaches. And like I just mentioned, you said, hey, I want to do this. Well, if we add these other 3 things on, we get a bigger bang for our buck. So I would encourage you guys guys to work with GOSEP and to develop out the who's, what's, and whys, and they can assist you with developing that sub application and submitting that up through FEMA. Does that help? I know it's long-winded, but does that help?
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff out there, but I'm going to kind of reiterate something that I said at the beginning. So of all of this LWI stuff, state of Louisiana loses out on 10 points because we don't have the most current building code adopted, and we take out 1 foot freeboard. So all of our applications are discounted right out of the gate because of that. So I just wanted the other committee members to recognize that, especially since a lot of them are more politically active than I am. I also wanted to state that I looked at the distribution of funds from this first round, and let's just say California and Washington, just those 2 states got 40% of the money. The state of Louisiana got less than $10 million out of all of that. Those 2 states got over $150 million. So there is somewhat of a lean towards high population coastal areas. I hope that BRIC can right that. I think even the state of Texas got less than $10 million or right around $10 million. And, you know, I know Sandy was a big deal. I know wildfires are out there, but, you know, Harvey was pretty extensive too. And of course, we've had our own issues here. So there's definitely a discrepancy to favor the coasts. Of course, they're more densely populated than the middle of the country. But I don't think that means we're not as valuable as some other areas. So the BCA is still a really huge bar for small rural communities to pass. And so I really would like y'all to consider that, maybe having a different criteria scoring for communities over 1 million people and those less than 1 million people. Because there are certain things that Acadia Parish are just, they're never going to get to. And there's valuable people that live in Acadia Parish, and there's value to this entire nation with I-10 and the Gulf and the resources that we have down here. So that's kind of me on a little bit of a soapbox. I'm sorry, guys, but it's been a hard week to see these numbers come out and see how it's, I mean, Menlo Park, the richest, the most expensive place to live in this country, got a ridiculous amount of funding. One community, and it's not even the whole thing of San Francisco. So it's just a little grating. I'm sorry. And I know that's not you guys, but if there could be some consideration for different criteria for large cities and small communities, I think that would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, ma'am, duly noted. And one thing I would like to mention is, as the saying goes, the devil's in the details, right? So when we look at the notice of funding opportunity, and we look at those qualitative and quantitative, the technical and the non-technical, you know, those points, a lot of those cross boundaries, like the Louisiana Watershed Initiative, you guys are not siloed into one community, you're an initiative, right? So partnerships. There's points for partnerships whenever you partner with someone other, your neighbor, right? You partner with a non-governmental agency, you partner with someone else, you get points for those. One of the thing, I worked in Louisiana for many years, working with GOSEP, and one of the things that I've noticed is the resilience that the communities and the citizens have in Louisiana to get it done. Okay, whatever that thing is, we're going to get it done. There's a lot of partnerships that goes on. One of the key things is we need to document that partnership. That'll get you the extra points. One of the things that one other quick thing is nature-based solutions. You guys do this all the time. You incorporate nature-based solutions into your work. So for instance, I don't want to take up too much time, but instead of just concreting out a drainage project, put some living shoreline around that drainage project, put some native vegetation that's going to increase the ecosystem. That's additional points there. So while we might not get the points for BSAG scores, we can definitely make up for that in other areas. So I would encourage you to work closely with GOSEP to really streamline those and say, okay, hey, if we put a little bit of vegetation over here that's going to serve as an anchor on that sidewall instead of concrete, that's nature-based solutions, that's increasing the eco environment, things like that, to get those additional points. So I completely understand, and we will definitely take that up to higher with the BSAG scores, but also know that's not the end all. We can do other things. I yield it back to you, ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you, Marty. And when you mentioned nature-based solutions, I know the Louisiana Watershed Initiative will have a series of webinars. I think it's starting next month. Maybe Brad can confirm that, but of training. So at least we'll kind of have more information. Maybe that'll help with the BRIC applications as well. Does anyone have? Yep, it's in October.
We're hopefully today we're confirming that date for the first session. There's going to be 9 sessions, and it's going to take us through the development process, the implementation process, the design process, the funding process of incorporating nature-based solutions into flood mitigation projects. And it's going to be 9 sessions that will start this month and go until July 2022. And this is in preparation. I'm glad that it's, dual purposes. It could be in preparation for BRIC, it could be in preparation for the ongoing LWI funding as well.
Thank you, Brad. Any other questions? All right. And yes, Stacy or Sandra, if you send the PowerPoint, then I could send that out with the links. So again, really appreciate the presentation, and Marty as well. Thank you for answering our questions. So we had the presentation for BRIC, and kind of leads us to the next agenda items, talking about eligible projects. As Brad mentioned, we have the projects for round 1, those that haven't been selected. That could be a potential source if it's not selected for round 2. Then for region 5, we have on our website, the Acadiana Planning Commission, we have the project inventory. We've encouraged people to submit project ideas. It's kind of like our wish list. I want to share that with you. I have that like in Excel format, and that at least we have a starting point for applications if we want to go ahead with the BRIC funding. And maybe we can kind of review that, kind of get you thinking about that. And then as a committee, maybe we can discuss what would that process be? How can we facilitate this if we apply for BRIC and looking at regional projects? But at least we do have some projects that weren't funded. If those particular entities, the parishes, municipalities you represent would still want to go ahead with those projects. And if we could find out if those projects aren't going to round 2, I'll have to cross-reference my list. But I'm going to do a screen share. Let's see. So like I said, we have you see here in the first tab, this is our project inventory. Again, this is what we've asked people to basically submit ideas. And I'm going to scroll to the list. Right now, we have 87 projects in our inventory. And I did highlight those that I'm scrolling down that are in green. That was funded or selected by the state. So we have 2 from the city of Alexandria. We have 1 from Lafayette City Parish Government. The ones in blue were the regional projects. That list I showed earlier in the meeting. We had Vermilion Parish and St. Martin, and the town of Mansura and Avoyles. That's the regional projects. And one last one highlighted in green would be the state projects, the town of Church Point. So we could eliminate those from our list. And going to the second tab, this is the regional round one project list the state gave us. So I kind of tried to keep the colors together. We can take out those projects that are highlighted in blue and green. And the ones that are in white, those weren't funded for various reasons, but those could be eligible for round two with the design support and technical assistance. So to go ahead with BRIC, I just wanted to show you we do have an option of lots of projects to consider. I'd have to kind of cross-reference these two Excel, files and eliminate any repeating or repetitive projects. But just as a committee, again, what do you think of the BRIC funding, pursuing that, and maybe how do we facilitate, that process? And we'd have to kind of look at this project list to see which might be a good project for BRIC funding. If anyone wanted to have a comment on that.
Kelia, this is Earl, and I'm glad to be able to join you guys. I appreciate Donald cranking the meeting up for me. I'm sorry I was a little late coming in, but I had another commitment. In relation to these projects that we have on the list here, let's maybe talk about that if we can. Are we going to go back to these agencies and see if they're going to move forward with them? How do you see this going forward in relation to this?
Yeah, I agree. We'd have to, I don't know if we start looking at our respective the parish representatives to look at that list and see if they want to continue or pursue this project, with whether that's through LWI round two, if that was on the round one application, or through the BRIC funding. And if they want to pursue it, then maybe we can go ahead and filter out that list. Maybe that would be a good way to do it, because some of these entities, we don't know if they want to continue apply for these projects to fund. I would think so, but maybe they have some of these projects, they might have found, other ways to fund it. Or any other, maybe some committee members or our guests' thoughts about that. I mean, what do you think about applying for this BRIC funding? There's a lot of money available. Maybe some of these projects can meet this. We have a lot of small, impoverished rural communities like this could apply to. And what do you think as a subcommittee, and then recommending it to our steering committee to go ahead with this process?
Celia,
Hey, Donald.
I had spoken about the Valle watershed project that was planned for and never financed, which is a large infrastructure project, and I would like that one submitted and have it taken a look at, because that is a multi-parish project that would have a lot of effect on the Valle watershed and the Mermentau watershed, both above and below Evangeline Parish.
And Donna, was that submitted for round one, or do you know if it's in the?
It was submitted in our wish list. It was not submitted for round one, because it's going to be a large project.
Gotcha.
I would have guessed it'd be over the $5 million that was allocated for round one, and so we did not submit it.
Okay, gotcha.
Kelia, while we're waiting on thoughts, I will make a comment. I had a constituent from Acadia Parish call me yesterday, and actually he's in the Church Point area where they just got a project for the retention project approved. But what we need, I feel as a member here and going forward on the funding end, we do need to explain this nature base that is being asked for more to the constituents, because they see it a little bit on the negative side. I would make that comment. And I tried to explain to the gentleman that it's really not, that we can work all of this together. And I know there were some good comments as I just got on the call concerning that and how to do it. And so I think that's going to be one of our big jobs with our constituents in our region is to make them understand the nature base that they're asking for in these project plannings so that they can implement it and yet still accomplish the goal that they're after. Of course, in most of their minds, all they say is the drainage ditches are stopped up, they need to be clean. That's what all they see. But there's ways to do it and include nature-based as part of it. So I think we need to be looking at that also as we go forward in this next phase to sell that idea.
No, that's a great comment because I think there is a lot of education that needs to be done on nature-based solutions. So hopefully, getting the word out for these webinars coming up. And then, as at least the members or subcommittee, steering committee members can attend and as representatives to communicate that to the constituents. So yeah, that's a good comment. I appreciate that, Earl.
Yep.
And I will send you this list as well. I know it's a little hard. There's a lot of projects there. And like I said, I'll cross-reference it. But if you want to think about it, that way we can at least have a starting point for some projects that we could apply for BRIC funding. And as our FEMA speaker said, I think most applicants feel like partners, anything that's going to help multi-jurisdictional across the regions, which is a priority, and having more supporting partners for that project. So
I'm looking at the notes, Q, the application period, it closes on January 28, 2022.
that's correct.
So we don't have a lot of time here. So if we're going to recommend it to our steering committee, we probably need to try to figure out how we can make a educated decision going forward as quickly as we can, the way I see it.
Yes.
This has
Yeah.
been, I've been listening, and it's, I think Iberia Parish is, has some projects that has regional implications. We never submitted them on the round one phase because our projects are very costly. They're a part of CPRA's master plan, which is the big partnership with the state. I'm thinking that maybe, and I guess this is where I get lost. I think, there's a lot of effort to go in to do what Earl just said, come make this application by, January. But before we go through that exercise, is there any way of screening what we have and what we're thinking of that would maybe qualify for this, the BRIC grant, so that we can, before moving forward with spending all this time, and then we find out that it really never was a good project to start off with?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir. No, on our end, so I could do like a kind of cross-reference this list, and I can do, work to look at these particular projects, work with y'all individually, and maybe to have a list, because we meet, the steering committee is October 21st. So maybe we could have some recommendations. And if as a subcommittee, maybe we can meet before then as well. If you don't want to, to expedite this process, because with our meeting schedules and the holidays, January 28th, I guess will come pretty quickly.
The reason I say this is because what I did with the master plan is I broke it down for Iberia Parish according to Hook 12s. And when I did that, there's lots of Hook 12s that go outside of Iberia Parish. They go into neighboring Vermilion, go into neighboring Lafayette to the north, and in some part of St. Mary. So, excuse me, St. Martin. But in my mind, it looks like it would qualify, list from what I just heard. But how do I go about, in other words, like in round one, we took components of the master plan because we were trying to keep the dollar value within what y'all were asking for. So it was never submitted as a regional plan. It was only those Hub 12s that didn't have some indirect benefit outside of the area, but it does have some benefit to the region. But I guess I'm asking, what should I do now to find out how to move this thing forward to see if it even qualifies?
Well, I could do, and I've attended a lot of the theme of the BRIC webinars, they're looking at the qualitative and the technical scoring criteria. I could send out that list, and that could be maybe a filter for you for the project, because this is not, LWI round one. This is completely different types of, I guess, priorities and funding. So I could send that out to you, Ben. That should
Okay.
help.
All right.
And then the websites, again, we'll send out that PowerPoint. They had it's a lot of information, but as a watershed coordinator, I could sift that through and then send you, I guess, the important stuff that would qualify, that you can look at your projects to look at this particular, criteria.
So Kelia, as the lead on this committee, I would ask the members that are on the call here today, is there any objection to moving forward with pursuing this type of funding? Maybe we can just ask it like
Sure.
that. And if any member has an objection, speak up. If not, we could move this forward to the main steering committee as a recommendation.
I have no objection to moving it forward to try to apply for BRIC funding.
The other members are good with it? And we got no objection, so Kelia will take that as a vote of positive to move forward to recommend it to the committee to make sure that we can pursue some of this funding.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you, Earl. And
Sure.
also, speaking of this, like I said earlier, it's something that I could comb through this, filter it out, send you the information as a subcommittee. And I don't know if depending on people's schedules, if we need to meet before the steering committee meeting, October 21st, to have more of a recommendation to the steering committee. I don't know if I'll be willing to do that. Or what do you see? Is that like a good tactic?
Well, I'm sure the more we can provide the steering committee, the better they can,
Yes.
absorb it in a one meeting sort of thing. And yeah, it would be good. If I would imagine we should have something a little bit ahead and make sure we're well prepared to present it.
Okay. Perfect. Sounds good.
All right.
Any other, I guess anyone has any other thoughts or comments regarding that? Okay. So our next agenda item. So we have on August 19th, Region 5 had a meeting going back to LWI for the museum, or the model use storage and maintenance plan. Some of you have attended, and I want to share with you some of the comments that we have. What we want to do is basically collectively as a committee be able to review those comments and submit to LWI as Region 5's comments. Cade has been very helpful in that, and we had a meeting recording, went through the transcript. There's more questions, I guess, than comments, but kind of wanted to share this with you. And we have until October 25th for public comment for the model use storage and maintenance plan. I'll just go through a couple of the comments that we had, and if anyone wants to add something today or later, like I said, I'll send out emails to get those comments, but collectively Region 5, I think it'd be a good thing to do to submit to the state. Again, this was a virtual meeting held on August 19th, and Dr. Iman Habib presented, I think Dr. Brian Miles and Ehab Maselli, Dr. Maselli as well, in the museum plan. A couple of comments I had is that we need to communicate this to elected officials, the multi-jurisdictional function of as projects cross our geographical boundaries, looking at the regional scale and impact of the project. This right now, they're building the foundation for the watershed model. So this is to support your larger regional scale projects. We're not looking at, the neighborhood scale, that granular scale as of now. We want to evaluate the benefit and cost of projects. Maybe the model could be a quantitative tool. I know, Earl, you'd made a comment. This is maybe more in the council. I don't know if you want to revise or add to your comments that definitely rural agricultural representations need on the council. And I believe Matt Johns of Rapides Parish had also said this as well. to have representation for the council. I don't know if you wanted to add anything in terms of the museum plan for that or not to put you on the spot.
Well, I mean, I think it just stood out to me when they presented the council and who was on it. It was obvious, and maybe it's because I live in a rural area and represent a rural area, but we also have several members here in this region that represent big rural areas of Voiles and many of the others. All Vermilion's got a lot of rural areas. So I just think that there is a void there, and we'd be open to any ideas on wording if you guys have additional ideas. But I think it's not necessarily just agriculture, but it is general rural representation is needed on that council.
Yes, I agreed. A lot of our parishes definitely are rural, so I appreciate that comment. I know we looked about accessibility, of models for private engineers. In our governor's recommendation, we want those public. We wanted to house it centrally, but if housed by the state, the accessibility would be there, but I don't know how this would look like, and maybe that needs to be also described in the plan. So if you attended that webinar on August 19th, there's different scenarios, what that would kind of look like if the model would be centralized or decentralized, and how to check these models out and check them back in. Again, this is available on the LWI website. There was an email sent, I think it was yesterday, regarding this. And I don't know, again, at this time, if anyone had any additional comments for the model use storage and maintenance. Like I said, we have a little bit of time as well to submit that. Yeah, go ahead.
I think our region has already took a stand that we wanted housed here and, on the region level. So that last comment there, if housed by the state, I don't know if we should even say that. At least that's how I think our membership has told us, to try to take a stand in relation to it being held here at the local level in the region. So I guess I would question that statement right there, if housed by the state.
Right.
Should we even acknowledge that at this time and just continue to take our stand based on what our steering committee has decided? Maybe Donald would want to make a comment on that one. Donald, as to how you'd like to handle that statement.
I understand your point, Earl. Let me ask Kelia a question.
Yes.
The state presented, or where are we hearing that it may be housed by the state instead of regionally?
That decision, as far as it's not been made. During the presentation, they gave scenarios as part of the model use storage and maintenance plan. So as far as I know, there's no decision has been made if the state's going to house it. And I believe all 8 regions for the recommendations are pretty much, maybe except for region 7, but region 7 thought maybe later on, but did recommend to have it decentralized. So no, I have not heard anything. And this could have been more of a question too. So obviously, I would, refine this. We could take that out, and that could be the comments, just to strengthen that we do want the model, stored a decentralized location to keep it at the regions.
And use the term accessibility to the engineers is why one of the main reasons why we want it more on the regional level, so they have more accessibility. And then if the state feels differently, they'll let us know, they'll give us justification, and then we'll discuss it. I think that's where we should be based on our steering committee. And that's my recommendation to you, Donald, here today.
Yes, well, based on Kelia's comment that all 8 regions have requested it to be housed locally, the state will have to make a decision that's going across or against the wishes of all 8 regions. So I think it's strong, and we could leave it out that the part about the if housed by the state. We don't want the state to consider that we would accept that.
And of course, I would, I'll ask for more comments, and you can email that to me. And I'll create this, draft, and obviously has to be approved, but by the committee before submitting to the state. So yes, no problem. Like I said, all except I think Region 7 does want it, and they're, closer to Baton Rouge. I believe they do want it housed by the state. I have to confirm with Rachel Sanderson, Region 7, the watershed coordinator, but perhaps later have it in there regionally. So, but I think the majority of regions do want it housed locally.
So Celia, let's discuss that. In other words, we need to get something to Donald's steering committee by his meeting in October so that the steering committee can approve all the comments and then send on to the state. So for us as a committee that doesn't have another meeting between now and then, or we may have one, we discussed that. Do
Right.
we just send this out to our members here on this steering committee, make sure we've gotten a reply back from all of them that they're good with the comments, so they want to add some, and then we would take that to the steering committee, right?
Correct. What I can do is clean this up and send it out to you if anyone wants to add, any comments. And then, as a committee agree this, we can draft the comments and correct. That could be on the agenda item for the October 21st Regional Steering Committee meeting
Right.
for the committee to adopt. Yes.
Okay. So the members that are on today, if y'all have any other comments, we're sure open to you opening your mic, and if not, Celia will get that out to you for review, and I would think you'd want to reply from each member, Celia, that they're good with the comments, or they have some changes, and then we'll look at it. Okay.
Yes, I'll get a consensus from everyone again, and if we meet before then to discuss projects or BRIC funding, then we can discuss this too. As long as all the committee CIP subcommittee members are good, then we can present that to the main steering committee. And I'll send you a bunch of reminder emails, so I'll flood your inbox.
Very good.
So,
Our group is quiet today.
Okay, so no one has any questions or comments about that? We can move on.
Next thing is the meeting schedules.
Yes, sir. Okay, so like I said, our meeting schedule, the next Region 5 Steering Committee meeting is Thursday, October 21st at 10 o'clock. Our next CIP subcommittee, we might have one before then, scheduled for November 4th. And the governance subcommittee meeting is scheduled for November 9th. And I did a typo again. I believe that's the Tuesday or Wednesday. I apologize. Because of Veterans Day, we decided to have it earlier that week.
So Celia, can we discuss if we have to have that meeting before the 21st, maybe the procedure you'll follow to accomplish scheduling that to where the members can anticipate an email from you? I mean, or how would you like to do it? I'd like for them to have an idea how we head into that.
Yes, I'll go ahead. I'll send an email out. We could schedule a meeting on a virtual would be more convenient depending on people's schedules. I could do like a doodle poll and come up with a couple of dates and meeting times. And it probably wouldn't have to be, I would think a very long meeting, but I'll get that. And if we could incorporate that into your schedules, but an email would start off that meeting schedule.
That's good. Doodle polls work.
Okay.
And we're talking about a virtual meeting?
Yeah.
Carol?
I think so. That'd be easier.
I think that's what we need to do, just a virtual meeting.
Yes.
Unless somebody has an objection, I think that works best, especially it'd probably be but about an hour. I'll give you probably 1 hour type meeting, maybe.
I would think so. Yes, unless we have more discussion and we can leave room for a couple hours, but hopefully it'll be shorter.
We'll try to schedule it maybe like 10 to 11 one morning, and then if we tell the members if we kind of keep it open, if we drag a little past it, if we get into deep discussions, we may go a little past the deadline, but an hour should take care of a lot of discussion really on a specific item.
Okay. Sounds good. Does anyone have any next agenda item, miscellaneous updates? Just want to let you know, as we, we're be October tomorrow. So we're going to look at the meeting schedule, meeting schedules for 2022. And I'll be sending that out as well, and we'll have calendar invites for that.
And I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome Jacob. We're glad to have you from Avoyles. I have a son that had lived there for 12 years. So he learned a lot while he was in your parish. He told me he learned things he never thought he'd learn.
I've been learning some good cooking.
Yeah, he did that too.
I'm glad to be part of it. I look forward to working with all of you. And I do talk to Ms. Keely yesterday. I do plan on meeting with her between now and next meeting. Kind of brought up to speed where the projects are at. And I said, look forward to working with all of you.
Appreciate you joining us, Jacob.
Yes.
Okay, I guess the next time for public comment.
Do we have any public comments registered that has come in, or does anybody that have any? Kate doesn't have any, do you?
I don't have anything in the chat box.
Okay.
No public comment.
All right, well,
Would
That's
you
been done.
entertain a motion to
yeah,
adjourn?
we'll entertain the motion.
Approved.
Okay.
You got a motion and a second. I appreciate you guys getting it cranked up while I was gone, and I look forward to the next meeting. So thank y'all.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.